welcome
morning.
back.
Woo! You scared me.
Good morning. We're back today. We have no guest today.
I'm
Thank
gonna put a. I'm gonna.
God.
Yeah, I know. Crazy, huh? It's been a long time, huh?
Well, we had a bizarre experience last week. We had a terrific guest on, but the sound problems were just insurmountable, and we could only hear about half of what he was saying.
That's too bad because he's super. It's really interesting. His story about the chocolate is pretty crazy.
Yeah, we're gonna
I'm
have.
gonna.
I ran into Panos on the street the other day, and I said I'd love to have him back on sometime. And maybe what we should do is send him a pair of headphones in advance, and because he is an interesting guy. He's a wonderful fellow.
Yeah. Send me. Hold on. Hold on. Let me.
Oh, speaking of headphones, so we are still very smoky.
Because my head is shining a lot today.
Oh, that's much better. I can hear you
No.
much better now.
I found my ears. Look, I
I
found.
couldn't hear you when you didn't have your hat on. I was just telling our listener.
One
I was
listener.
just saying how smoky it is here, and we're still battling with this smoke. It's so terrible. And I mean, I like smoked food as much as the next guy, but this is ridiculous.
I know it's crazy. Oh my god.
And what's interesting is I've noticed, because there are, I joked in the beginning that, well, at least we're all wearing masks already anyway. But the fact is, there are two different kinds of masks. There's a whole different kind of mask for smoke. It's
Oh
that
yeah,
one,
right.
the one with the valve on the front. And you're not supposed to wear those for the virus because it actually only keeps things from coming into you, but you still are spitting out all these aerosols. So I've
Great.
seen people walking around with 2 layers of masks on, like one of the valve masks on and then some sort of cloth mask over
Yeah, the
that.
smoke is crazy. The smoke
It's
is
just
not so
crazy.
bad today, but it was bad. Yeah. Anyway,
Well, it
nothing we
comes
can
and
do.
goes.
Well, so then it's.
It all depends on which way the wind is blowing, but then I guess that's true of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's certainly
Yes.
been true of my
Yes.
career.
So we are going to change the format, right? We're gonna change the format of the show. We're gonna do a half an hour and a half an hour. So one of them is gonna be half an hour for interviewing. We have a lot of people that are going to be on the show, but we figured 1 hour was too much for some people, so we're going to do a half an hour, and then we're going to keep that half an hour that we used to have for our question and all the stuff that our students have always asked, and we we don't have time to answer those
Right,
people.
right.
So
Well,
it's like,
that's good because I
and
thought you
then
were going to.
and then demo, and then we can do some demos. People like
Right.
demos. They like.
Well, that's good because I thought you meant I was going to be on that side and you were going to be on this side, which would be. I don't know
Now
if I could handle that.
I can switch the things. Are you
Yeah, I
not
don't know.
comfortable on the right side? Are
You know,
you? Are you?
I don't know. I'm right-handed, so I don't know. It
So
may
I
just
can put you on the
distract
other
me.
side. I can put you on the other side. That's easy.
No, that's okay.
All right. So today
Why
we're
don't you
gonna.
put me behind you?
That I can. How about?
Superimpose me right there next to you. All right. Well, we do.
This is better.
Oh,
Look,
much better.
you see,
Much better.
this is better, no?
Yeah. So for those that
All
don't
right.
know, I'm under the table.
So today we don't have guests, so we're gonna go back to our,
So you're
the thing
stuck
we
with
use.
us.
We're not gonna say anything. We're gonna keep
We're
our
just
breath.
we're gonna think some really great thoughts about food. No. We have stuff to talk about. In fact, we have a question that someone posed a long, long time ago.
Like a week ago.
Yeah, yesterday I think it was. And that is, it's about Italian food, and they want to know, why is Italian food so popular? Because Italian food is fun and it's good, but it's, when you think about the cuisines of the world today, you've got, all these fabulous foods from Southeast Asia and all these interesting African foods and Caribbean foods and Latin American foods. You think, well, why is Italian
Why?
food still popular? It's kind of bland by comparison. But
And so you also understand something that everything that says Italian food, Chinese food is often kind of misrepresented, right?
Right.
I'm working for a client on for some events that I'm doing online. I'm working on a Chinese chicken salad. I know this is not real, right? Because the
Right.
Chinese it's not true, but it's called a Chinese Mandarin salad, and it has crispy noodle, the awesome salad that we create in California. But it's still created. It still says Chinese chicken
Right.
salad, right? Okay.
Well, it's like chop suey. I
Oh
grew up,
yeah.
chop suey was this like really exotic thing when I was a kid. And it turns out it's not from China at all. It was totally made up here in this country. And
It's like burritos and
well, it's like nachos. Nachos are not really a
right.
Mexican thing. That's a north of the border thing. They don't even eat, even the idea of tortilla chips are really more an American thing than a Mexican thing.
Uh,
Anyway,
anyway, to go back
so
to Italian. So yeah, ma'am.
I think I think Italian food really became popular in the 70s and 80s. And I think part of the reason was that for people to cook at home, it's a very easy cuisine.
Our friend is
Yeah,
here.
we can cold smoke
Kenneth.
everywhere now. Yeah, I just left a side of salmon out on my porch, figuring, by tomorrow I can have lox.
Yeah.
But I think Italy became a big destination for American travelers. And it is a fabulous place to travel. The art, the architecture, it's a very hospitable place. It's a wonderful country to travel in, and it's a very easy country to travel in. And I think people brought back their love of Italy through that. And I always say that Italian style pasta kind of fueled the 1980s, especially in New York where I was living. I mean, pasta was just everywhere. It was just everybody was all about pasta. All of you disappeared. You're in
Oh,
blackness. Yeah. Turn the lights back on.
let,
Anyway,
let me hold on. Don't
oh
go
no,
away.
it's okay. You actually look better this way. Anyway, oh nice. See,
Wait.
you've really
Let me hold
changed.
on. Hold on.
Anyway, we at Dean and DeLuca, I used to sell a book. We had this series of little cookbooks that we would stack up on the counter, and it was kind of an impulse item. And one of them was, they were all beginner cookbooks. So it was like, Chinese food for beginners, whatever. And one of them was Italian food for beginners. And this woman was looking at it one day, and my boss came by, Giorgio DeLuca, who was kind of a character, and he walked by and looked over his shoulder, and he just said, Italian food is for beginners. It is beginner cooking. And that's kind of true, because so much of it is based on pasta and very simple vegetable dishes that, it became popular, I think, because people could cook it. It was much more manageable than, certainly haute cuisine from France, or complicated Chinese dishes or Thai dishes that required specialty ingredients. I mean, Italian food, at least in the 80s, the ingredients were very easy to get, and it was easy to cook, and people loved it. And pasta. I used to eat a lot of pasta. I hardly ever eat pasta anymore, but
I
I
don't
used
either.
to
Yeah.
eat a lot, especially in the 80s, because it was easy, it was filling, and if you used good imported Italian pasta, it was delicious, and it was hugely versatile because you could put anything on it.
Yeah. Right.
Anything from a
So
simple tomato sauce to vegetables to all kinds of stuff.
it's so interesting that
Of course, Italian food.
pizza and pasta are
Oh yeah.
really are very big. I mean, it's like you say, it's a huge staple, right?
I don't know of any other food besides
Yep.
pizza, and you probably throw pasta in too. But even just pizza alone, I don't know of any other food that has so conquered the world. I mean, you can go almost anywhere in the world and find a pizza parlor. I mean, Berkeley alone, I mean, you can't throw a
Yeah.
stone without
Right.
hitting somebody making pizza. It's crazy, and people line up for it. At the cheese board across the street from where you are now, people line up for their pizza, and it's just pizza. It's the same pizza every day, and so it's phenomenal. And to me, what's more interesting about Italian food is all the really great products that they make, like real traditional products, like
Right.
their cheeses, first of all, their great meat products, sauces, things like that. To me,
Well,
that's much more interesting than
for
just pizza or pasta. But
for example, no, interesting. That's interesting because in Paris there was this Italian restaurant that was very, very a great Italian restaurant, and they would do no pizza, no pasta. It was from northern Italy,
oh
and it was
yeah,
really cool. And I was like, "Whoa, that's crazy!" And then, yeah, he says there's other things in Italy to than pizza and pasta, and he was serving some amazing stuff.
right.
And then I realized that, and I knew that, but I realized more that Italian food is not just pizza and pasta like everybody would think. So, right?
Well, and what's interesting is that Italian food is not any one thing. I mean, up until the end of the 19th century, Italy was just very fragmented. It was all these separate countries, and even more than even more than regions, it was city states. And so you traveled from one region to another, and the cuisine totally changed.
Yeah.
And it was, pasta is much more prevalent in the South. And in the North, you're more likely to eat polenta and rice. Or if you do get pasta, like in the Emilia-Romagna area, it's going to be egg pasta, fresh egg pasta with very rich sauces. Whereas in the South, it's dried pasta, macaroni, and it's probably the sauce is very simple. It's probably just olive
No
oil
egg.
and peppers, maybe vegetables. No
No
egg,
egg.
no. Because the South was traditionally very poor, and it was also a pretty rough country, so they didn't have the kind of cropland. They didn't have pasture land for cows, so they didn't have butter, and
Well,
eggs would
butter,
have been
I
a
know,
real
but butter.
luxury. So
Let's butter came later for people. They don't. Some people need to understand that butter is a late product. It came after the 1600 or
yeah,
1700. It's very interesting. It comes much later. Before that, it was
yeah,
lard or
lard was much more common.
yeah, it was just lard from animal. There was no and olive oil, and that's it. Olives have been there for a very, very long time, right? But there was nothing else.
Right.
There was no vegetable oil at the time. It was just
Yeah, and olive oil, it came to Italy probably through the Greeks and the Etruscans and various civilizations, but it was really the Romans that spread olives all throughout the Mediterranean area. The Phoenicians too, a little bit earlier, but the
yeah.
Romans did it in a big way because for them it was a big commodity, and they needed a lot of it, just like they needed a lot of the holy triumvirate of wheat, olives, and grapes. A 40 egg tagliatelle that was ridiculous. I'll bet it
They
was
were
ridiculously good.
Kenneth. I think they were lying to you.
Yeah. They knew you were an American and you probably weren't good at math. So
Oh, it's funny.
So the other thing is Italy was really they were kind of the leaders in gastronomy for a long time in Europe, well before France, up until, well, some people
It's up.
say it was like sort of the end of the 16th century is when it kind of moved to France.
No, I don't agree with you, James. I think I was talking about that the other day with a group, and I did some study on this. And actually, the first celebrity chef was 1250 or 1300. So there's a whole period of time where chefs were getting very famous, and the first one was one of the first one was Taiwan. His name was
Right.
Guillaume Tirel. Guillaume Tirel at 1300, and he was one of the first celebrity chef, and that's 1300. And that's mostly in France because there was all these castles, and what happened is people start to invite. So the way it works is you have to understand that the church and the king or the power had to be together, and in order to create new regulation or new actions or new war, or especially after the crusade, they needed a lot of money constantly.
Right.
In order to bring people in, they need to have good dinners. We talked about this last time, and basically they would come to the good tables, and
Sure.
those very rich noble had a beautiful table, and they would invite people with influence, and they had their special chef. And now we saw a starting of the celebrity chef who just started at 1300, 1400. When the revolution came and it was all those chefs, they were out of jobs. We saw a huge amount of restaurants opening à la carte because of that issue. But Italy was certainly in the race. I'm not saying Italy or France was the first one, but France was way before that because of that they were very into the food always. When you look at François II in the
Right.
1600 and 1700, François II and Charles IX, who made an edit, like a law on what people can eat and how much they should pay. And what happened is, I'm sorry to be long, but what happened is, as the
All
Sorbonne
right.
opened in Paris, they had a lot of students. And now what's happening is, instead of having just the population to feed and where they could feed themselves, all of a sudden there is this extra people that came to the city that need to be fed. And I'm sorry for my camera, guys, I need to figure it out. But what happened is basically that all these people needs to be fed, right?
Uh-huh.
And
Well, it was also interesting.
so what? So that means that now we see a lot of restaurants, and because of that, we were the kings or the people in charge at the time were implementing some rules about how much to charge and what to eat and what should be in the menus. That's pretty cool, right?
Mhm.
Anyway,
Well,
to
and the
come back to
noble
Italian. So
families, when you
so
talked
Italian
about
is
these,
so Italy is not the first country. Italy and France were very old, traditionally into cooking, but Italy came later into that kind of a fancy food. And the main difference between France and Italy at some point, and is Italy starting to introduce sweet stuff into their menu, where France would not do that. In France, they would not put like raisins
right,
or anything sweet in there. So at some point, just before the revolution, it's
right.
starting to speed up. But those are minor details. Uh, but then Italian food became very,
Well,
very
I was going to say also that those noble families were very close to the church and to the clergy,
always,
and the
always.
church is what kept alive a lot of those food traditions. The monks were the ones that kept
Yeah.
alive traditions of baking bread, making vinegars and sauces and cheese and all kinds of
Right.
stuff. So they had pretty good stuff for their tables because they got it from the monasteries, whereas the people weren't eating so high on the hog in those days, but the nobles were. Isn't that true today too?
Yeah, except everybody eats crap today,
But
rich and poor.
yeah,
So that's kind of
yeah.
weird.
Well, it's interesting.
This
Every
is what I'm
country
drinking.
seems to have their.
My tea. So I'm drinking this, guys. This is something that we're gonna come out and soon. It's a specialty. I'm sorry. I
This is what I'm
oh my
drinking. This is
vodka.
this is pure tequila. This is pure tequila here.
This is pure
All
goodness.
right, it's not that pure.
This is a tea that we make at Kitchen Affair that we're gonna start selling soon. It's really, really good. It's really about the immune system and how to boost that immune. So a bunch of herbs, like loaded with herbs and really good. It's pretty strong. I'll kick your butt, man. Whew.
Well, now Italy sort of also came up with the idea of a menu in terms of courses. Didn't they? Didn't they take that to France? Like you go into a typical Italian restaurant even today, and it's a very structured
No, that came from the
menu.
Russians.
The antipasti, the prima.
No, I think
Oh,
that came from the Russians.
maybe.
I think that came from the Russians because manger à la russe, so à la française, when you eat à la française, the Italian brought us the fork and the pacing. but the traditional appetizer and main and stuff was brought by Russian. I believe that's the Russian brought us that. This is why we changed that after, in Russia they were speaking French. Who was the Tsar? Which
Right.
one?
Well, the upper class did. The
A lot of
educated
people
people
were
did.
speaking French because French was the language of Europe, and but
It was
the
the
manger à
language
la
of
Russe. So the
diplomacy too.
In France, they put everything on the table. It was like a big buffet with a bunch of stuff, and you eat all day long with everything on the table. In Russia, they would pace the meals, and Italian took on that pacing very well and adding the forks to that. So we don't eat like pigs, basically. So Italian brought us the refined,
Right.
eating like like humans. And then introducing a lot more sweets, just like the English and Italian brought us more
Right.
sweetness to the food in the menu, not after or before, in the menu. So they were able to introduce sweet stuff.
Right. Right.
But it's the
In
same
other
again.
words, introducing sweet stuff into the savory.
Yeah, in the menu,
You're
in
talking
the
about
meal,
putting yeah.
like
Yeah.
raisins,
Yeah.
manchego. I mean, manchego, sweet paste, honeys. Because in the
Mm-hmm.
Roman time, honey was a big condiment. That and garum, the fish sauce.
Right.
That's how fish sauce
Right.
came from. It's the garum from Romans, and Romans were using honey in everything. They used to use that for the wine to keep the wine. They used to use that for
Right.
a lot of things. Right? It was
Right. And in Sicily, they got a lot of influence from the Arabs that came through there. They brought in a lot of sweet, very sweet
yes,
dessert kind of items made
yeah,
from sugar and almonds and
palm sugar
citrus.
and honey. French word for charcuterie, but most of it is Italian.
Interesting, we use a French word for most of it's Italian. Well, in Italy, it would be salume, or you would go into a salumeria, which is where you would buy cured meats and things like that. In France, a charcuterie is where you would go to buy cured, mostly pork products. But you're right. If you go into a store today, they have a charcuterie section, which also includes, Italian sausages and hams and stuff from all over the place. But yeah,
Yes,
the French word has kind of come to be common. But if you said salume, people wouldn't know what you were talking about. People think salami is one thing, but salami's the sausage. Salume is the general category of meats. But charcuterie is easier to say. I don't know.
it's a
Olivier, can you say charcuterie?
charcuterie. It comes from the word
Charcuterie.
flesh and cooked.
Right.
Fresh,
Cooked flesh.
chair,
Cooked
chair
flesh.
cuite, chair cuite.
Right.
So
So I
charcuterie,
have a great quote for you.
you do.
Uh, it is from this is by Alan Davidson, who wrote this book, The Oxford Companion to Food, which is a little bit dated now, but it's still a great reference book. And he's talking about it's still eating in Italy is a very fun, comfortable thing, and you're usually not intimidated by snooty waiters, and you've got all you have to do is go and enjoy the food. And he says, it will be for the people in the imminent third millennium, which of course we're now in, to decide which countries or cultures have made the greatest contribution in terms of food to human happiness. But it seems safe to predict the Italians will be up there at or near the top of the list.
Wow.
I agree with that, although, as I've said before, I'm not strictly an Italophile. I don't Italian restaurants are like the last places I go out to eat.
Why?
Although Corso is pretty damn good, but they
They're not
but
close,
also
right? They're not close.
Corso they are closed currently, but I don't know if they're closed for good or not. But it was very interesting in the 80s as I watched Italian food come out of uh, the idea that Italian food was just one thing, and it involved red checkered tablecloths and Chianti bottles covered in straw with wax dripping all over them. And people really began to discover that Italy had dozens of different cuisines, and that the cuisine of Sicily was completely different from the cuisine of the Piedmont or Emilia Romagna or Rome or Tuscany. They were all very, very different. And that was exciting to see. I still think, generally speaking, the cuisine is a little bland for me. I've gotten too excited by other world cuisines, like I said, Southeast Asia and Africa, and definitely Latin America and the Caribbean. So
what's so
that's
special
it.
about all our the food that comes from everywhere? So everybody has his food. Let's start with US. What's the number one food in US? Bourbon. That's
Bourbon.
they're known for, right?
You
There's
consider that a
two.
food, eh?
No, but I mean, like, so if you take
Bourbon
any
and
country,
hamburgers,
when you
which
say
actually
bourbon,
go
yeah,
very well
burger, yeah,
together.
bourbon and burger,
Yep.
you think America, pasta, pizza, you think Italy, right? Except pasta came from
Right.
China, but who's gonna
Right.
know?
Well,
France, what do we
and
say? Cheese, wine.
cheese and wine. Cheese and
Well,
wine for
Italy
sure.
wine is pretty out there too.
Yeah. Yeah, I love Italian wine. Greece, cheese, olives, certainly olives.
Yeah, yeah. So olives is a lot of places, right? Because anywhere in the Mediterranean was controlled by the Greeks first, then the Romans.
Hmm.
So there's always a big control of that, and then people would grow that. The olives were particularly important because it makes the oil. You drink it all the time. You make dressings with that, so it's very, very important staple.
It was in the ancient world, in the Mediterranean, it was hugely important.
Yeah,
It was a symbol of life itself. I mean, people got olive oil coming and going. They would baptize babies with it. They would anoint the dead.
it
It
was for
was
the
used
skin.
for your
They would burn.
skin and hair.
You know that in the Phoenician. So the Phoenician, they used to one of the biggest Phoenician city is Tunis, Carthage.
Right,
So
right.
Carthage, now Tunis, in Tunisia, obviously. And we went there when we were little, and
Actually,
you buy
they're right
those.
next to each other.
Well, this is what, and you can see the old Carthaginian city in Tunis. We went to see it with my parents.
Hmm.
It's completely incredible, and we have those
Yeah.
oil lamp, and that's what the oil we use, and it was a simple receptacle, kind of the lamp d'Aladin. That's what they look like. You fill up with oil
Uh-huh.
and you light it, and that's your light. This is your. And we used to have some for our house because in Rochebrune, my parents had a farm in south of France where we spent 2 to 3 months a year, and all the family come. And in this farm, we always have like 20 to 30 people on hand all the time, and there's no water, no electricity, and everything is lit by those those oil lamp everywhere in the house, and everything was cooked by with either those gas little thing that we brought outside or the most of it from the fire. So
How did you charge your cell phones?
yeah, there was no phones, there was nothing. So people would know that, we'd have people come in, they'll just come. There's no like, hey, we're gonna come on. I don't like. There's always people coming, and we see those because we live on the top of the mountain. We had a old farm that was very big, and you could see people coming, and they say, oh, this is whatever coming, and 20 minutes later they'll arrive, and they bring food and wine, and it was really cool. Every day was a new discovery, and then there was so many people in his house all the time that we had to have like those bed that you open, the
Right.
like in the army,
Like, right.
uh,
Cots. Yeah.
cots. cots, we had bed everywhere, people sleep outside, and everybody was
That
making
sounds
food,
like fun.
and that was every summer, and we'd stay there for a long time, and we had to go to the village, get some water. We had the source, but the source in the summer was not great, and we got lambs. So we got a couple of lambs that we'd kill at the beginning of the season, and we'd bake them on the fire, and we had field of lavender and apricot, and we collect all this apricot and lavender, and we do bunch of stuff with apricot. There was apricot every day in tart, in confiture, in whatever. That was really cool. It was really good. It was a good time.
Nice. That's a wonderful memory. I had similar family kind of
Right.
summer memories, but they weren't so food set. The food was much simpler. It was fried chicken and potato salad and lots of fresh baked pies, which were
Yep.
fabulous. All my aunties and my mom, they were great bakers, and they would always make pies all summer from the fruit, and then they would change through the summer and fall depending on the fruit that was available, which was fun.
It's
This time of year, they're getting. Yeah, it does sound like a beautiful movie.
who said
That's right out of Jean de Florette.
yeah, also who said this famous guy who said, yeah, French people are the only people in the world that are talking about what they're going to eat for dinner at lunch.
I think that was me. I think I said that.
Ah, well, great.
Yeah, well, and also where else do you go?
That's what
France
we
and
do.
Italy, I find is true that you'll see cab drivers, two working class cab drivers, and they'll be arguing about the best place to get a certain kind of salami or a
Yeah,
certain kind of cheese, or and people. It's just in the fabric of everyday life, which in the United States, I think too often food. We think a lot about food too, but it's usually about just filling ourselves and
right. So
just
in
eating
France
in
and Italy,
general. Whereas in
no, it's true. Both those countries, France and Italy, they were really they loved the upscale, the service, the whole beautiful everything. That's true because Italy and France were close also. Uh,
but also just the common everyday peasant food. I mean, people, every farm they didn't
that's
just they didn't
it all
just
depends. It also people were eating well sometime where there was no war. When there's a war, or there was always a bunch
well,
of
yeah, war.
wars, and that's the point people had. So when you look at were they healthy and they were eating well, it all depends if there was a war or not. And because there was a lot of wars
Oh
all the
yeah,
time, I mean, look at the 100 years old war. What happened in this case is basically people invade and they
yeah,
crush all the culture, so there's no food, and the peasant, they still have to pay the dime, and they
right.
still have to feed the Lord, and the church. So there was a dime on the church was also getting food and whatever they're making. So the peasant had nothing left, nothing, and the only thing that was promised is
Also the soldiers would come through and take whatever food they could find.
so that
So
was a hard
if
time.
you had a farm and you had chickens and a cow and all that stuff, that was great. But the soldiers would come through and they'd take it all because they needed to feed the soldiers, so they'd leave you with nothing. Yeah, wars are not good on cuisine.
So it's
That's
very
why the
difficult.
olive branch is the symbol of peace.
Right. But that's why it's very difficult to determine what was a good diet in the old days, because it all depends how much food they had at the time. Because if there is no food, well, the diet is not good. And it's not a question of what they were eating,
Right,
it's because there was not enough of it. Uh, because the main staple was bread.
right,
That's what they were eating. And sometimes that was just it, bread. No meat.
right.
No meat because they could not eat meat. It's not because
Yeah,
they wanted to be vegetarian. They'd love to be eating more, but they had only potatoes, which saved them, and cabbage was a big deal. And you know what when French people were eating a lot? Flageolet. That was the main food. Beans, those flageolet,
oh yeah,
that was a staple for very, very many years in
right.
France. So potato came later, but the beans were here
Well, and
before.
also if you were a farmer with a family, if you had a cow, if you were lucky enough to have a cow, or a goat, you would not butcher it, because
No.
that won't last very long. But a cow produces milk for years, so a
And cheese.
cow is there to get milk from, and a goat
And cheese and eggs.
to make cheese.
I mean,
Right,
have you had
right.
cow eggs? Cow's eggs are the best, man.
Cow's eggs, yeah, yeah. They're harder to get though,
Yeah.
and they're huge.
They come at night, you have to wait.
Yeah, no, that's the thing, in a poorer agrarian society, chickens are for eggs, cows are for milk. It's not about meat. It's not about
Yeah, right, right. It's yeah.
And the pigs, on the other hand, were raised for meat, but there you didn't just butcher the pig and have a big pork roast like we
Right.
might do today. You butchered
dry
that
the
pig
pig.
and you made products that would last you for the next year.
And that
Sausages, hams, all
and your
that kind of
fat
stuff.
and your fat. That's
Yeah,
where the
you'd
fat
render
came
it down.
from.
The lard you
Lamb,
would
all
use
this
to
stuff.
cook
Yeah.
with, right? And then they would take the skin of the pig and make all their footballs out of it. I'm pretty sure that's what they did. A lot of sausage in Switzerland that includes vegetables, because the feudal lords used sausage as tax, so they stuffed them to make them cheaper.
Possibly.
Well, beating the tax man, I think, is a pretty common European pastime.
Yeah, you have to understand, Kenneth, that the food was very regulated in the old days, much more than now. And there were people who were doing just that. And there was a guild after the 1600. The food was extremely controlled, and that's pretty amazing. But I have books, I have history books that are crazy detailed on how much regulation was in the bread, how much you could weight, the cheese, the meat, what piece are supposed to go in a stew. I mean, this is crazy stuff. And there's a rule, there's an ordinance by all the laws, because they wanted to protect the city and the citizen. Now there was stuff on, I forgot the name, but there's this mold that would come out on rice. That was part of an ordinance that as soon as they see that mold, they get rid of the wheat. Everything was called wheat at the time. There was no like wheat and but it was very, very regulated. So I know that the sentence was very, very bad, because that was poisoning the people. And people, they were caught, they were usually either, well, they were thrown out of the city. They were their oven, their business was removed and given away to the city. So it was very controlled. It was really amazing, much more than now. And interestingly enough, it was for the good of the people, which has completely disappeared. Now it's money. And at the time, even in 16 and 1700, it was for the good of the people. And who would come together was the doctors and the mayor and all the people from the city. They wanted to make sure that their population was healthy and they were not getting poisoned, because if they were, they would make less money. So it's the same goal. That's fine, but at least they were taking of the citizens, right?
Right. So
Anyway,
what's your favorite Italian food?
My Italian food, I
do you have a favorite? Yeah, what's your favorite?
I'm getting to like focaccia a lot. I don't need a lot of bread, but to make focaccia, it's such a cool stuff. And you know what? How about this? How about we next week we make we'll demo focaccia. The problem is, in order to do that, they have to make their sponge in advance. So that might not be. I can show them.
Right. I could make the sponge here, and then I could hand it over to you, and you could bake it over there. Can we do that?
No, but I can do it. I can make the sponge in advance. Yeah. So the sponge is the yeast. I mean the yeast and the water and that little thing that ferments. It needs to be an hour. I need to do that. I could do that. We could do that.
My favorite Italian food. I mean, other than individual products like Parmigiano Reggiano and prosciutto and that kind of thing, is the pastas that they make in Bologna with a true bolognese sauce, which is a rich meat-centric sauce that's cooked over hours and hours and hours, and then they serve it with this really delicious fresh-made egg pasta. I've had it there. I've had it here too in places that made it very well, but I've had it there, and it's just one of the most incredible dishes you could ever hope to have. It is so, especially if you're washing it down with some really good wine from that region, like the Valpolicella. It's just food made in heaven. It's what I imagine heaven
So
is like.
if you ever go, yeah. For
Yeah,
the
not that
meat,
I'll be there.
long cooked meat and tomato. There was it tomato in there or no tomatoes? What was the?
No,
You remember? No,
maybe some tomatoes, but it wasn't what you would
because
call a
tomato
tomato
also
sauce.
came.
It was,
So you understand, tomato came later, right? You know, you
oh
guys know that,
sure,
huh?
oh sure,
So tomatoes
yep,
came later, and the tomatoes very interesting because the tomato was poisoned for a long time, and for that there's
right,
two reasons. First reason is, and I'm not sure in Italy, but Italy and each country was afraid of the tomato for different reasons for a long time. And in France, it happened because one of the botanists, I forgot his name, in 15, so 1600, just before, he put it into a botanical book, and he categorized that by mistake as a poisonous nightshade. It is a nightshade, but it's not poisonous. But that's what the label was. So nobody wanted to touch that for a long time.
yeah.
And then later, about 80 years later or
There's still
100 years
people
later,
that won't eat them because it's a nightshade.
that's another issue, and I can talk about this. But like a little bit later, another botanist literally classified that as a as mandrake. Mandrake is a very strong poison. So after that, tomato was very
Hmm.
suspicious. The inflammatory part of the tomato is the skin and the seeds. And when you look at pomodoro, it's always removed, right? Traditionally, they always remove the seed and the skin. So they had already a notion
Right.
that that was not good for you. And this is what's not good because it's lectins. So lectins could be inflammatory for some people, and for some people, it could be a good thing. So lectin is a personal thing. If you have a hard time with them, then you can't eat the skin of the bell pepper, of the peppers, of the tomatoes, of the eggplant, and all these guys, and the potato, because all these are nightshades, and you want to remove the seeds because this is where the lectins are. If you try that, and you should have less issues. But anyway,
Well, I'm an omnivore, which of course means that I only eat omnis. But I eat everything. I eat the
yeah,
skin, the
right.
juice,
But
the seeds.
again, if you don't eat too much of
I don't eat.
anything, you don't get reaction. You
Right.
get reaction when you start to mono eat, to eat one mono diet over and over and over, and the body can't take it anymore. Like this, it can't process. It needs a variation of stuff in order for it to everything breaks down.
Right. Correct. Well, I don't eat a lot of tomatoes. I like to eat tomatoes this time of year because they're so good. And I like to eat them just the way they are. I like to slice them up and put a little
Yeah,
olive oil and sea salt on them,
tomato
maybe
is
a
a
little
very
balsamic vinegar.
tomato is a highly nutritive food, very high in nutrients, lycopene, anti-cancer food. Also, it's a really strong anti-cancer food, and also lectin could be a beneficial aspect in the tomato for some people. Cancer is complicated, but you want a food that has a lot of nutrients, obviously, and not too much sugar. In general, this is where we stick.
Now, I don't know if it's still true, but it used to be that Italian restaurants were one of the most prevalent restaurants in America. Uh,
Which one?
you, Italian
Yeah,
restaurant. There were
right,
more Italian restaurants in the United States than any other ethnic cuisine,
right,
which
right,
I
right,
don't
right.
know if that's still true. It's probably pretty close, but more and more other cuisines are cropping up these days. But it's funny, and everybody was opening Italian restaurants, and a lot of them were opened by Italians,
Because
and they
that's an
tend
easy. I mean, you
they
just what you make a pasta. Everybody thinks they can cook, and then the restaurant
right,
is a tough call, man.
yeah, yeah.
Do you guys know anything about old or dried garlic? Cause some people cannot digest garlic or onions or any of that family. That sucks. And some people, I have no idea why. It's really an allergy thing, and some people cannot get the raw garlic, and some people cannot eat the dried. Or you're talking about the
Right.
old black garlic and dry garlic are two different things. Okay, so the black garlic is the one that has been supposedly super good for you. I'm not sure why, because I can't find information on what's good for that. But I usually eat garlic raw and fresh as much as I can because that I know for sure it works. Dry garlic, some studies show that it's beneficial. I don't know because what I
I
like in the
just rather
garlic is
use
not spicy
fresh.
stuff. Yeah, right,
Right.
exactly.
And those people that can't eat garlic, they tend to have a lot of trouble with vampires.
Yeah,
That's a proven. That's a
they have,
proven
they have
fact.
long they have long teeth.
Yeah. Yeah. I eat garlic a lot, and so I don't have any trouble at all
Me
with
too.
vampires.
So for the
Not
garlic,
that I have anything against vampires necessarily. I'm a more inclusive thinker than that. I think vampires have rights, and I
oh
don't want
my
to get
god,
any letters from vampires saying, "Why are you dissing
from
vampires on
the
your show?"
from the National Vampire Association.
It's from the LGBTQV Association. Oh God, now I'm going to get letters.
I think you're gonna get emails because I think letters is very controversial right now. I think
Yes, yes.
everything is controversial. So
I
what the
still
hell?
write letters. I'm a big letter writer. In fact, I just mailed 2 letters today and 1 yesterday. I write letters to my family all the time.
Oh
I love
wow!
writing. I love writing letters. But that's me. Some people just can't sit down and write.
So
They
that's
just
one
won't
person.
do it.
So we know one person in America
Yeah.
sends letters. So that's good.
I want the post office to stay in business just
I
for
know.
me. Just for me. So, yeah.
Cool. So I want to go around the world quickly about what's so famous about the world. I mean, there's like Argentina. We know it's meat,
Beef, yeah, beef. I think
beef.
that's very true
Brazil
with
also. Brazil
America
is
in general.
coffee, acai.
Right, right.
Uh,
Mexico, chili peppers. Chiles,
well,
chiles.
Mexico is all
Chilies and
the
corn.
corn, chocolate.
Chocolate, yeah.
That's
Can you
and
imagine what food in Europe was like before they brought all the foods from the New World, and what the New World was like before they brought stuff from Europe? That exchange, we'll have to talk about that one day, because that is an incredible thing. I mean, in Mexico, they had no poultry, they had no beef, they had no lamb, none of that stuff before the Europeans brought it over. They had no rice, they had no sugar.
and so to give you a perspective, that's about 1500.
Yeah.
15 plus
Well,
1590.
it started then, and then for the next
So
100
who was the
years,
first one, Magellan or Columbus? I forgot.
Columbus.
And then
Columbus discovered Haiti, I think.
1490 or something, Columbus.
1492, he sailed the ocean blue, as we learned in school.
And he's the
And
first one who brought the papers back,
I
right?
believe so. I believe that was on his second trip, but I'm not sure. Columbus never made it to Mexico, though. He only was in the Caribbean. And he was a brilliant navigator, but a very, very poor governor.
So Cortes was before. Cortes was another. Yeah, Cortes.
Cortez, yeah, Balboa, all those guys started going over there and raping and pillaging the countryside.
And that's one of the reasons, by the way, Spain became such a big power and church became such a big power because church in Spain was like this and became a huge power in Europe because of all this gold they were getting.
That's right.
Free gold.
It's just too bad that they always had to view the natives as some kind of a threat, and also just they viewed them as just sort of subhuman. So they just walked over them, destroyed
Just like
them.
in Africa, it's the same
Right,
thing.
right.
This is a
I mean, and
it's a man thing, human
just
thing.
we just wiped out these people instead
Yeah.
of learning from them, instead of like living side by side, because they had so much. These were advanced civilizations. The Mayans and the Aztecs, those were civilizations that were very strong, doing really important things back when the ancient Egyptians were around. So, but we didn't want to learn from them. We just wanted to
No.
destroy them or enslave them. Either way, kind of sucks.
Slave is very old, huh?
Yeah. So what else? Japan, rice, tea.
Yeah, sushi, obviously.
Sushi, yeah.
Who did raw food? I mean, raw fish, other than Japan.
I don't know.
I mean, I'm sure fish was eating raw in many places, right?
Anywhere where people were fishing, I'm sure they had a certain amount of, eating raw fish. China,
So
big
Kenneth,
time tea.
it's not just the white people. So there was in a time of slavery, people need to understand that slavery was not allowed, but it was able to be so prominent because people in that country was helping. So in any country except for South America, but in Africa, there was a lot of also people that were in the country helping for greed. So I don't think it's a color thing. Yeah, white people have done a lot of bad things, that's for sure. Later, but I think it's a human thing. I think as human, we have a terrible connection with human and nature. It's terrible. It's crazy. So I'm not sure it's just the white people.
It's
I think
predominantly white people.
because of when they were the one conquering the world, like the French and the Belgium, they were the worst people at the beginning. French and Belgium, and then the English. Okay, those are the worst people that started slavery. But it was not just because of white people. It was acceptance in this country. People with greed. They were making money on their brothers and sisters, and that to me it's even worse. But
Yeah, well, I've always said that the history of the world is the history of people doing horrible things to each other. And yet sushi was invented by the Dutch. How do you figure that?
I don't know.
I've never heard that before. Um,
One more aggressive. Yes, more aggressive today. Today, the white people, yes, for sure, today. But that's
well,
not how it started. So I want to point that I don't. I completely agree with you, and I'm not a white supremacist. Please don't. I'm a Jew, first of all, so I would not fit very well in there. And but
well,
yes, no, it's not. It's not. People really. Everybody needs to help someone in this area and be nice to each other, whatever the color. I've helped many homeless for many years. I don't care about the colors. I think colors is just a skin thing from the sun. That is it. There's absolutely nothing inside the body that will differentiate a black person from a white person until you look at the color. There's nothing else inside in the brain, in the teeth, nothing. Maybe in the dance though. But I'm serious. There's nothing else behind
no,
below the skin
no,
that is different, right?
yep.
So it's like
I've never understood it. I've never understood that kind of racial
we feel
prejudice.
pain. We have the same exact. We want our kids to go to school, be happy. We want our family to be, having food and a roof on top of our heads. And everybody wants the same thing, whatever the color is. So I don't understand the whole concept here.
Some people say, "Oh, well, if you're not used to being around people of color, then it's what you don't know you're afraid of." And I say, that's bullshit. I grew up in an area
Well,
where I hardly ever saw people of color.
it's the thing is true when you see, let's say, when we went to Tunisia with my sister, she had white hair, blonde hair, and all these kids they never seen that, so they were running, touching the hair.
Yeah.
Luckily they were happy to see that, but they could be very threatened also.
So Kenneth, maybe you're right. I think because sushi's not just raw fish. You're right. Sushi is raw fish with rice. So I think the Japanese were eating raw fish long before Europeans came there. But maybe the Dutch introduced the idea of putting it on rice and doing that whole thing.
I thought California roll did that.
Yeah, and the California roll is funny because that has nothing to do with Japan either. But maybe
does it have to do something with California?
It has a lot to do with California, I think. I think they do something like that in Japan, but the California roll as we know it, I think, is an American invention. But that being said, I do love sushi.
Yeah, sushi is great. What else? What else is known in the world? So
Well,
noodles and ketchup, China.
China and also um, uh, catsup. Catsup. The original thing was from Indonesia, wasn't it? Wasn't it a fish-based sauce?
I
It
thought it was Chinese,
originally
but
wasn't tomatoes. Yeah, only the
fish sauce is the fish sauce is really from the Roman Empire. It's his gourm. It's from that's where it comes. That's for sure. The Dutch, yes, that's where, and actually the Dutch were allowed in Japan in a very small area only. It was an enclave in Japan. It was in almost 1700. It was 1680 or something, really late. Japan was completely isolated from anywhere in the world, and the Dutch were the only merchant to be allowed to do business with the Japanese, and there was never any contact. So what happened is the Dutch would deliver the food, right? And it was an enclave and a second enclave, and nobody would meet. So they would leave that. They would bring the whatever how much they were, the bartering, exchange, but they would never touch or anything or meet the foreigners. It's crazy stuff, huh?
yeah, yeah, they were very much did not want to pollute themselves with
Yeah,
The Europeans.
with anybody.
Who they thought were real barbarians. I mean, they didn't. You
Yeah,
look at
yeah.
it when you think about it. The
And
Europeans that came there, the Europeans didn't bathe. They had very crude eating habits. They were they had very bizarre religious ideas. The Japanese were much simpler, and they were very clean.
more
They
zen,
had
and they
they had
were,
they
about
had very
nature,
yeah, and they had a much more sophisticated diet, and their
and they
view
had
of the
samurai,
world, huh?
and they had samurai,
Oh yeah,
samurai.
yeah. I thought you said sunrise, and I was going to say I think they had those in Holland too, but
That
yeah,
didn't help. The Mongol invasion didn't help. The Mongol invasion never helps.
yeah, yeah.
It's always a pain. It's
I
like,
think it's always best to avoid a Mongol invasion. I have
impossible.
signs in my yard: no
Impossible.
Mongol invasions.
So, all right, guys, that was fun.
I mean, we
So
were
we're
kind
gonna
of all over the place today, but it was fun, and I think I don't remember what the original question was, but
Italy. We started in Italy and we ended up with the Mongol invasion. So that makes sense, right?
well, that's the history of the world right there, folks. So
Caesar, Caesar. We start from Caesar to who is the Mongolian chief? That's not Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan.
Genghis Khan.
Fascinating guy. We'll have to talk about him one day.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I also say that the history of when you think about the history of food is the history of the world.
Yeah.
Because so much of what went on was a search for spices, teas, various kinds of foods. I mean, they were also looking for precious gems too and raw materials. But the trade and the search for spices back in the Middle Ages cannot be underestimated. It was a huge business, and it was really important. I mean, there was a time in Venice where peppercorns were used as currency, and even salt was used for currency over
Salt,
time.
carob was used. Carob
Right.
was used in the Egyptian time. That's how the carat from the diamond came.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more
Food, no,
important
food
than
was
food,
important. Yeah.
except maybe air and water. But I'm addicted to all three. I can go the longest without food. I can go for a little while without water. I can't go very long without air. So I guess that's the most important.
How about beer?
Beer, I drink it every day. So if I ever quit, I'll let you know.
Me too.
Yeah. The Silk Road. Kenneth, the Silk Road. Yes.
There's a spice road.
I don't know what his point is, but I agree with him completely.
It's his shirt. He wants to point out his shirt.
He's bragging about his wardrobe again. Well, listen,
All right,
Thank
we're
you for
done.
joining us today. We have a special guest next week. We have Roy Fong from the
The
Imperial
same,
Tea Court,
the same one, the same one.
the same one who didn't show up before, but he's going to be here next Monday to talk about tea and to talk about all the things that they do with tea. We can't wait to have a discussion with him.
And then
And
we'll
we'll
do
see you
our
then
quick.
next
Yes.
Monday,
Thank
3
you,
o'clock.
guys. Beautiful job. Thank you, Kenneth. Good to see you again.
Be safe, everyone. We'll
Yeah. Bye
see
bye,
you next
guys.
week.